Today is April 17th, 2005, and I am Jessica Clark, the Teresa Mack Germans from Russia History Fellow and Project Coordinator for the Germans from Russia Oral History Project. It is a pleasure to visit with Adam Boschee in West Fargo, North Dakota. For the introduction record, will you please state your full name and date and location of birth?
My full name is Adam Gordon Boschee, and I was born, I grew up in Lair, North Dakota, but I actually was born in Colm, North Dakota.
When did your families move from Colm to Lair?
Oh, and my date of birth was October 15th, 1945. Now my parents always lived they lived in Lair, but I just happened to be born in Colm because, in fact, I was the first of all my brothers and sisters that was born at Colm, because it was not a hospital but a home where women went to have babies. Otherwise, all the rest of my brothers and sisters were born at home. In the house, they tell me, on kitchen tables or whatever. But I was born in a home in Colm, and I think there was a doctor there, or a midwife is what it was. But I was the first one.
So are you the youngest then in your family?
I am the youngest, yes.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
There were 7 of us. I had 2 sisters and 5 brothers.
Was it just convenient, or for them to take you to Colm, or to go to Colm to have you, or is it something new that started? Or
I think it probably it was maybe 2 things. Maybe something that they were starting to do. It was more trendy then, and maybe a convenience.
What is your earliest memory, your earliest childhood memory?
You know, I get laughed at sometimes about, I can always remember so much. Like, I'll tell my kids, and I'll tell my wife Karen, and I'll remember things when I was 5. And so whenever I go back and I'll say, I remember that, they said, oh yeah, you were 5 then, right? Yeah, I think I was about 5 years old. The types of memories, you know, in our family was like 2 families. My oldest brother, Leroy, and I'm the youngest, so he's like 75, or close to 75, and I'm like, 60 or 59. So there was quite a separation between us, and yet the 3 younger ones, myself and Reuben and Shirley, and then after that there was a separation, and there would be like Floyd and Dolores and Clarence and Leroy. So they were teenagers and older teenagers when we were born, or especially when I was born. So when I started remembering things, I remember them as being fun, and we just loved to be around them, because the little kids be around teenagers was great.
Yeah.
They got to do things. They took us along to a movie, or they would smoke cigarettes and hide from mom and dad and stuff like that. Of course, we didn't dare, And when we got caught smoking by them, and then we'd get it from them. They never tell mom and dad, but so I had a lot of childhood memories with them, and great memories were pleasant things. Going to movies and being around them and their friends, it was just like just the whole feeling of being with them, and they were big, and we thought we were big, They would have girlfriends, or they'd wrestle and fool around, and we'd think we were part of that. But many times we were pretty disappointed, because they didn't really want that much to do with us when their friends were around. They were older, and especially the girls were around, and of course the girls liked us too, because we were little guys.
Do you have a brother or sister that you were closest to when you were growing up?
Well, Reuben and Shirley were closest to me, and we did a lot of things together when we were youngsters. Shirley was just a fight on wheels, I'll tell you. We could fight I'd fight with her, and she would scratch me, and I'd pull her hair. But you know what? We were best of friends. I mean, we get into the darndest arguments, and over the littlest things. And all of a sudden, I had her by the hair. She'd be scratching me, and we'd be calling each other names, screaming and shouting. Of course, my mom, she'd come and make order, and then it was better. And Reuben, of course, and I were good friends too. We still are, very close. So the three of us did things together, and we kind of connive against each other, or they would set something up for me, and I work with Reuben, and we'd do something for Shirley, and those kinds of things. So yeah, we were really close. Even when she was in high school, and I was like a junior high schooler, we were best of friends, because we'd hang around, or her friends would come over, and it was, we'd see all these older girls, and my friends would come over then, and then we'd all mix up. It was kind of fun.
Which one of your older brothers and sisters did you tend to hang out with the most and follow around the most?
Actually, like my brother Floyd, he went off to college, so I kind of missed him there. Clarence was the one that I did a lot with. I remember Clarence would take me to the movies, and he was, for all of my brothers, like Clarence, he would be kind of an older type dad for me especially. I kind of like to hang around with Clarence. I did with all of them, whoever drove or something, I'd get in, I have a big deal then. But I know Clarence would always be kind and watch out for us, even when we were, older in our teenage years. He was the kind that he could mix it up. I remember with him, you could wrestle, and he was the strongest guy, man. And it took me until I was almost 19 or 20 years old before I could compete with him when we'd wrestle. Of course, we wrestled then, but he would be the one that you could have so much fun with. You just tear around and wrestle each other down and laugh and do all kinds of things.
Was there ever competition between your brothers and sisters to see who could do something better, or who could get your parents' attention more, or your older brothers and sisters' attention more?
Well, they always said that since I was a baby, I was kind of the favorite, and of course, that's what they say. I don't think so. But maybe I was. When I think about it, I could get them in trouble in a hurry, because I was the youngest. But my brother and I, Reuben, we would get in trouble, and of course my mom, her favorite thing, for we got spanked on occasion, but my mom's favorite thing was she would have, like a dishcloth that was wet, when you would scrub counters and stuff. That was her piece. I'll tell you what, when you got out of hand, you would get it, and you would get it with that one. And she, one of her favorites was "You schluchtern speak," and I'll tell you what, when she connected with that darn thing, it hurt. But as we got older, we were getting faster. Of course, she would swing, and I think sometimes she missed, just because she was so kind. But then if it really got out of hand and we really were in trouble and she couldn't get us, then she said, "And now I'm telling Dad when he comes home," and then order came right away. And my dad, I don't remember my dad, he would spank us, but it wasn't something hurtful. He would do it in a way where it was, you would remember it. And so when Mom said, "I'm telling Dad," then we knew that it wasn't good. And there was such a difference between my mom and Dad. Like my dad, I don't think I ever heard my dad say even damn. He's a very kind, demeanor type man. For my mom, she could swear with the best of them, I'll tell you that. And then that was what was so interesting now when you think about them, how she could go off in a heartbeat, and then she would rant and rave about something, And my dad would always sit back and he'd analyze, and he'd always say, you could get my mom to agree that Jessica is just no good. And all you have to do is say the right things, and she was on your side and you were on bad. And my dad would always say, wait a minute now, we gotta hear her side too. You know, so that was the difference between those two people. And you know, those are life's lessons that you pick up. And I think that type of thing really helped me in my profession and education, particularly administration, regardless of how bad it is. I always remember what my dad says, we have to hear both sides. And you know, I still do that. Even today when I administer with teachers and parents and stuff, no matter how bad it is, I tell them I want to hear the other side too, because there might be something that I didn't know or they didn't tell me. So
it's a good philosophy to live by.
Yes,
to look at both
it
sides.
is. I love those people for that. So
if you think back to your childhood, who would you say did more of the disciplining, your mom or your dad?
well, when I was really little, I would say, you know, my sister Dolores. She was, I think I know my mom worked out in the fields a lot when I was really little. I remember that, like shopping and all that. And she was pretty active on cutting hay with horses and stuff like that. She was always proud of that too. So now Dolores came into the picture, and Dolores had to take care of Shirley, Reuben, and I. And Dolores didn't spare the rod. I mean, she was like our mom, and boy, we had to toe the line. I know one story I always say is we had a neighbor girl that came over to visit us, and I don't know exactly how, couldn't have been much older than 6 or 7 or 8, but I remember it. And we decided, and her name was Arlene, and my sister Shirley, Reuben, and I, and Arlene, went down to the lake, and we went swimming with no clothes on. Well, it wasn't long, and Dolores was down there. She had gathered all our clothes, and she hustled us out of that lake. Now, no shoes, no socks, no clothes. And I'd say it was 200, 300 yards from that lake to the house, and across that prairie, and there was stickers and rocks and stuff. And boy, did she scoot us up there, no clothes on, and telling us all the way. And she had I can't remember what she had, but boy, we moved. And I always tell her that story, how we were in there making, having a good time, and all of a sudden, here's Dolores, and we had to get out of there, so.
Oh my.
It's kind of funny, no.
Well, talking about the prairie environment, what was it like growing up on the prairie?
Well, you know, I have real fond memories when I was a little kid, and we lived on a farm north of town. One of the things that really, when I was little, I wasn't big enough to go along when my brothers and dad would go out, like in the fall or in the summer to do haying, or in the fall to do harvesting and stuff. I was just too small and not big enough yet. So my other brother, Reuben, got to go along because he was just a little bit older than I was. So I had to stay home. And I was troubled all the time about that. I didn't want to stay home, and they said you had to stay home, and I had to go home. Mom did Dolores. And of course, they were in the house, so I was out and about that farm doing a lot of things, you know, experimenting with a lot of stuff, you know. And so that's, to me, I remember that. And I was, you know, I think I cried a lot because they went. But I could have quit crying in about a minute, but I made it sound like it was all day, you know, so they feel sorry for me. But I remember doing that. But I also remember getting to go along every once in a while. I know one fall, my older brother Leroy finally said, well, let's take him along. And he can do this, and he can, I think I was driving a tractor, and they were on a binder or something. And I thought I was a big guy, man. I was really tooling along, and then he would be in the back there, and he'd say, links more, right more, and you know, I'd have to go left or right, and you know, and I think I did okay, but those are the kinds of things that they were kind of funny. I remember one time, I think it was my brother Clarence, he had this John Deere tractor, and here again, I wasn't very big. And he said, now you take this tractor and I'll put it in gear for you and you drive it home. And then when you get home, you just pull the clutch out and stop. Well, those old tractors at that time, they had the clutch with a lever on here. It didn't have the foot clutch.
Mm-hmm.
So I drove it home and I got into the yard and I was going to pull that clutch out and it wouldn't. It was stuck. It wasn't stuck. It was just hard to pull. And I think I drove around that yard for 3-4 hours before I finally, I think I wedged my feet up and I put both hands up and I got it to hold it back and I finally got it to stop. But I was driving around there like pulling on that clutch. That was cool. I remember that I was scared as can be, but at least I was able to drive around that yard for a while. So.
What were the winter months like for you?
Oh, we got to we spent a lot of time inside. We were outside, but we got to go to the barn a lot because they milk cows in the morning and the evening. So I remember that we'd go there. And I remember having this little pedal tractor and chasing up and down the barn. And then we got to milk, they milk by hand, so we got to milk and we all had these little aluminum pails, of kids. And then when my brothers and sisters were and mom and dad were done milking, and then we got to go in and we put the milk. Sometimes my mom, she would probably leave a little bit in that cow, so there would be something, but we'd always, my brothers, they'd be milking, if you come by, then they'd squirt you with the cow, and those types of things. And I remember one time, Clarence, it was like in the spring or something when these cows would get out in the grass. And we would have these little pails and we'd sit behind these cows. And when they got out in the grass, they got really loose, When they would go, they would go. And this cow coughed. And she gave me a blast of manure all over my face. I about choked. He had to run me down to the house because I was choking and he was taking it out of my mouth and my eyes and my nose and that kind of stuff. So, but wintertime also we had fun because we'd go to the neighbors with horses and they call it bobsled. They package us up in the straw and these big coats, and then we'd go see the vendors. And the vendors had kids our age. And so we got to visit them, and we just roughhouse and run. We were sweaty all the time, just playing. And then they'd come to our place, and I remember we'd go to the barn, and we'd go up in the haymow where there's a lot of hay, and we'd have all kinds of games. But of course, church, and we do that all the time too. When I think about, well, that was mostly the summer though. Saturday nights were big, where people would go to town, and I think they work all week, and then Saturday nights they go to town and buy their groceries and take their eggs and cream and all that stuff in. But what I remember is Dolores and my mom, we'd have to get cleaned up, and then this for Sunday for church too. And Saturday in the afternoon we had to get cleaned up, and they scrub us. They put us in these big tubs. They were like, I can't remember what they were made out of, but you would think they were going to scrub our ears off in the hot water, and then they sit there and they have the hardest things that they rub in your ears and clean. And I hated it, but they said, you're dirty, you've got to be clean when you get to town, So that was our weekly bath. You get in that hot water and soap and brushes, and you would wonder how dirty you could be when you think about it now. But when you're a little kid, I suppose it didn't take very long to them, but to us it seemed like it was a waste of time.
How far was the closest town?
We lived when I was on the farm. We lived about 2 miles north of town.
And then how far were the vendors from your?
They were about 2 miles west. No, I'm sorry. They were about 2 miles east. Yeah, we'd go there a lot. to the vendors, or they would come to our place a lot in the wintertime. They were closest to us.
What was your favorite season growing up? Did you prefer summer, winter, spring, fall? And why?
I would say kind of like spring into summer was my favorite. And one of the reasons I would say that is because that's when everything was starting to grow, and I had fond memories. My dad had Angus cattle, and I had fond memories of going out with him and my brothers, and we would be in this either a sled or a little wagon with the horses, and to check the cows because they were having these baby calves, and I just loved watching that. But I also remember the danger of that too, because there's always a dog or two along. These cows are just nasty when you bring little dogs along. My dad always said, keep the dog in there, and soon you'd get out, and then the cows were all riled up, and they were protecting their calves. But for that reason, I think I enjoyed spring and summer more than any other time when I grew up. And later, of course, as I got older, I kind of enjoyed fall for hunting.
Did you go hunting as a child?
Did I what?
Go hunting as a child?
Yes, I remember I had this 20-gauge shotgun that it was my dad's or whatever, but my brother and I shared that. I'd say, we would hunt ducks and rabbits and stuff like that.
What was that like for you, going with your brothers?
It was almost like being with them all. Like I said earlier in the interview, is that it was like being with them. Hunting wasn't as important as being with them. The fact that they would kill ducks or shoot ducks and geese, and they, of course, they let you shoot once in a while first. They'd say you shoot first, and because I think they wanted to let you know that you could hit something. But anytime something fell and they were all shooting, they all say, "Well, I haven't got that one." You had idea, and I probably didn't hit a thing, but they always made sure you had something like that. So.
Did you know your grandparents?
Not my grandfather and grandmother Boschee. I don't remember them. I remember my grandfather Collins and grandmother Collins, but more so my grandmother Collins. I remember her more than any of them because she was. My mom, we would stay there on occasion. I remember that because I didn't like staying upstairs because we had these pots that we had to use, and I was all scared to use those things. But anyway, the reason why I remember her is because certain times of the year, and I can't remember, I was talking to Doris about that. My mom, and I think Mrs. Bender, and her kids about my age, we would end up at my grandmother Kautz's house. And I'm not sure whether it was at Christmas or at Halloween, but for some reason or another, we would be, I remember that house in the room, and all of a sudden this little person would show up, and she had a white sheet on, and she had, she could see through, she had eye holes and stuff, and she was dressed in white, and I recall she had this little switch, and she'd go around, and we were standing there, and you were scared as you can be about this, anyway, because we didn't know. I'm guessing, at that time I probably didn't know that it was Grandma Coates, but you didn't know because she was covered up. And then she knew all about us. For some reason or other, she'd ask you some questions, and then she would point out to you some of the things that you most recently made your mom mad at you for, or whatever. And you wonder, wow. And then she would switch you. And man, it was would sting, you know, it wasn't real bad, but it would sting. And she'd come up to you and say, "Oh, Dom," and then she'd say what you did wrong, and then you'd never do that again. And, what do they call it? Belzenig?
Yeah.
Something like that, Belzenig. And that I remember that, and you know, but I don't remember what season that was.
Usually it's around Christmas time, I believe.
Yeah.
From what I've
Wasn't
read.
there a Christkind too or something? But this is a Belzenig. And boy, and I think I remembered it because I was scared as I can be to know this person had this power to know so much about me, and I wasn't real sure if I knew who was under that sheet. So it was kind of interesting, but she knew all about us, and boys, things that we did, and then we promised we'd be better.
Kind of scary, the poor little kid.
Yeah.
So how far was your grandparents' place from yours then?
Well, they lived in town.
Okay.
I remember them living in town, and so, and you know, the other thing I remember too, during that time, like I remember specifically my grandmother Cox, when she passed away, that tradition of that time is they still would bring them into the home, and I remember my grandma Cox in that house, in the coffin, and I think she was there for a couple of days. They seemed to, I don't know if that was, when I think back now, I think that was common at that time, and it was kind of an eerie feeling, because I didn't want to stay in that house alone, you know, with grandma there and the coffin open and stuff. I don't know about that, but
Was that the first funeral you like death experience that you had dealt with, or?
yes, that would be the first one that I can remember.
But how old were you?
7, something like that.
Fairly young.
I do recall a young child that died. That would have been my first funeral that I actually attended, and I was scared as I can be because I never, other than my grandmother, hadn't seen anyone our age that had died or had been killed or something. That was pretty scary.
Who was that? Was it a local kid? Like
Yeah, it was a local child, and I don't remember. I don't remember the name.
Well, how about your father? Were you really close to your father?
In a sense, yes. I learned so much from him. See, my parents were like when I was born. Like my dad would have been like 44, and my mom would have been like 42. So they were older parents than the normal was, and so. But you know, my dad. It didn't seem to make any difference to me. I mean, my dad, up until his late years in life, I mean, we were teenagers. He was out there, and he could tell us he could beat us in foot races, and I don't think he could anymore in foot races, but he'd always play catch with us and stuff, and even in his 60s, you know. And so when my dad, he was like 62 or 63 when I graduated from high school. And to me, you know, when I think back, that wasn't a big deal then. But most of my friends had younger parents, but I never once associated that my folks were old and somebody else's parents were young. It didn't make any difference to me.
Where was your dad from?
He actually he had more relatives in the Wishick area than there. He's related to all the Rudolphs in the Wishick area, and I think his parents were from the Wishick area also.
Do you know how he met your mom?
No, I don't. I do know that I heard at times during those years they went to dances and stuff, you know, and that's probably where he met my mom, was at a dance or whatever.
Were you close to your mom?
Yeah, I was close to my mom. She was, I was fairly close. She would share a lot of stuff with us, and she was very emotional. type person. I mean, compassionate, and she would cry easy. She would get mad easy though, but I mean, she was um, great for kids. Like my daughter and my niece, she babysat them when we were working there, and it's kind of interesting because I think we paid her $25 a month to keep like my daughter Amy, and after Amy started going to school, here I find out she never cashed those checks. She kept her for years and never cashed checks. And I said, isn't that something? How special can that be?
Just wanted to do it to spend time with her granddaughter.
Excuse me?
She just wanted to do it to spend time with her granddaughter.
Oh, yeah, and Amy and Tina and my niece, they still talk about my dad and my mom and how my mom was just like going to a restaurant, she'd fix anything they want, and they would, they would tease her, like she would tell them, she'd have some of the things she'd say about. My mom was just a special lady too. She'd tell these little girls, now don't you take a runaway, and of course they all thought that was funny, and grandma says, don't take a runaway, meaning don't really run away now, and my dad was special too, he'd sit around with him and talk to him. But she would, and they'd play tricks on her, and I think she loved that. Even though that sometimes when you think about it, you think it was mean, but I think she really liked having those kids there, and they still have fond memories of that too. Grandma would fix anything they want, and that was special.
That's great. It's really great to have. Growing up, did you have close aunts or uncles?
Not really. I remember a lot of my aunts and uncles, but not really close ones. I would say more so because maybe it's because I had older brothers and sisters. But I didn't have real close aunts. I knew who they were. I know my Uncle John, of all the uncles that were brothers of my dad, I knew Uncle John best, and he died of colon cancer, I believe, in the 60s, but he would always give me a dime or something Saturday nights, I could always count on Uncle John to give me something when he seen me. If I was with my dad, he'd always reach in his pocket and come out with something, so.
Did they live around the area that you grew up?
Uncle John did, yeah.
Uncle John.
He lived north of there and probably west. Now some of the other brothers, like August lived in, my dad's brother August would live in, he lived in Dawson. And I recall going up there at times because they had a bunch of boys, a lot of kids. And most of them were older, like in my older brother's age. But I remember going up there too, not often because it was quite a drive in those days. And boy, some of the things that those guys did were just scaring me to death now. Riding horses and bucking horses and riding cattle, and it's crazy. They did some hard stuff, but so do we all. You think today, if you did that today, you wonder why you didn't get hurt.
Thinking back to the house you grew up in, can you describe it?
Yeah, sure. Most of like on the farm, we spent a lot of time in the basement. It was a large, full basement, and that's where we ate. There was a kitchen down there, and I know like a sofa and stuff. And I remember, especially in the wintertime, my dad would, they worked hard, so I know that, especially Sunday afternoons, he would be taking a nap, and I remember crawling around over him and under him and through the feet, and I remember that really well. And when you think back, you wonder why he didn't, club you or something, because he just did all that kind of stuff, and he was kind of napped, But I don't think it was any different than like when my kids were around me. You just tolerated those things because it was something that was a bonding thing. And just like when your own kids were with you, I mean, they could crawl on you and you could just let them do it. It's no big deal. So I remember that. But the house then on the second floor, that was the formal part of the house where they had a formal dining room and they had a glass cabinet. They called it the glass trunk. In fact, Dolores still has that. And I was always told to be careful with that, because if you break that glass and go in there and break those cups or something, you are going to have trouble. So I remember that, and then further in the south side of the house there was a sofa, and there was Mom and Dad's bedroom, and then there was a third floor, and that's where the boys or the kids slept, you know. And I remember being there, and then there was this. What do they call those things when they're built out and they have a railing on them? And,
like a loft type of thing?
Well, no, they were outside.
Oh, a balcony type of thing?
Yeah, kind of a balcony thing. We used to love going out there, but Mom, particularly, we always had to have either Mom or the older ones with us, because it was quite a drop down. You know, when you're younger, you always think you can hang over things, you know, but I just love going out there at night. Sometimes, like, the older brothers and sisters would go out and we got to sleep out there. We thought we could sleep all night. We never made it, you know. The bum would get bad or something, but we'd lay there and we were all covered up and, you know, with count stars and talk about different things. And so I remember that house pretty clearly. In fact, I think it's still, it's still there. So, but the living area was mostly in the basement where it was warm and all the eating took place, and Mom did a lot of baking, but the second floor was pretty formal.
Upstairs where the kids slept, was it just one large room, or
No, there
were
was
there
two rooms
and then divided boys, girls, or?
Yeah, kind of, but it was colder and stinker up there. And the reason I remember that is because, like when you get sick as a little kid, and my mom would always come up, and then you slept under feather ticks, you know. I mean, there's no heat up there, so you slept under feather ticks, and of course your body heat and feather ticks was, I mean, that's all you need to do, was warm in there until you uncovered. But I know if you weren't feeling good or something, she would come up and she would have this warm grease and garlic. And she would rub the bottom of your feet with that, and then she'd put thick socks on. And why? But you know what? You just felt a whole lot better. But they do things like, especially, my dad was good at this, like if he had a stomachache or something. And I remember that too in the house, because they had a wood stove or a coal stove down there. And if you had a stomachache, they would take, he would take a thread, just a sewing thread, and an egg, and they would tie that around you, and then he would take that and throw it into the stove, and then your stomachache went away. Wow, when I think back now, and it worked at that time. You just felt better when that happened. And I think it's because you believed it would. I don't know if you really did, but you could believe that. But I know in the coldest of the winter months, when you got up in the morning, when you uncovered from that feather tick, you didn't spend a whole lot of time there. You went on to the main floor in a hurry, where the registers were for heat. But you know, we never slept alone. There was always 2 or 3 of us, or sometimes 4 of us under a feather tick. So you're pretty warm with your brothers, and that was okay.
And at home, did you speak mostly German, or did you speak English?
Mostly German. In fact, when I went to first grade, I didn't know very much English. And to this day, I still give my sister Dolores credit, because she was a teacher. I don't think if she wouldn't have been my first grade teacher, I don't think I would have passed first grade. That was so strange, because my mom and dad spoke German all the time, and that's how we grew up. We knew English somewhat, But even in later years in their life, when I would call them, like when I lived in Hankinson, and I would call them at Lair, and if I spoke English all the time, it wasn't real. They didn't speak a long time, but as soon as I started talking German to them, man, they talked all night. So, yeah, it was, we spoke a lot of German, but it was, the German, Russian, it was like, we could understand each other in that area.
Did you teach your children German?
They know, they can't speak it. I think my daughter knows more. They always tell me that they know when I was mad or when I was upset, and then the German I used, they always knew there was a problem. And they often said, well, why don't you teach us? And I said, it just doesn't happen like that. My parents didn't teach us either. We just happened to be in that environment, and they spoke it all the time, and the neighbors spoke it. That's how you pick that up. So Karen and I, we spoke that when we didn't want the kids to understand it, and we would rattle some of that off. But they always wanted, but they knew when things weren't going okay, what certain words meant.
You spoke of school. How far were you from school? Your house to the school? Was the school in the town, or?
About 2 miles. And I remember going to school. My dad would take us to school in a bobsled in the wintertime. And I remember sometimes the snow was really deep. And I remember one time we came home, and for some reason or another, that darn bobsled tipped and the horses ran, and we all fell out. But it was kind of in front of the house. And I think he probably was testing some other horses or something. But I remember there was Logan County School. There was 2 schools in that town. There was Logan County School, and then there was the McIntosh County School, since we lived in Logan County. But we only went to Logan County School for maybe through my 2nd grade. And then they closed that, and then all the kids went to that one school.
What types of subjects did you learn in school?
Well, all the basic ones, the maths and the English and stuff. The interesting thing, especially like in Logan County, there was like 8 grades in one room and one teacher, and that teacher would teach everything. And then, the interesting thing about that is when she would be working with the older kids, like 7th or 8th or 6th graders, and you were doing some of your work, you couldn't help but listen to what they were saying and what they were doing. And then she would, that teacher, I had a male teacher other than Dolores, but then they would have the older kids help you too. So if they were teaching, let's say for example, they taught the 3rd graders, maybe the 7th graders came over and helped you doing something. But that was in Logan County School. Now when we went to McIntosh County, that was different. Then we are all in one grade, and that was an adjustment for us there.
About when you moved to the larger school, about how many kids were there in your grade?
15, 18.
That's a pretty good size.
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to speak German while you were at school if you wanted to?
Oh yeah, with some of our friends, we spoke a lot of that, I'm sure. In the classroom, we didn't do that, but I know in the playground and stuff, we didn't do that. But we got into English more so because we were kind of forced into it in the classroom. But we had some interesting teachers. They were really firm people, man. I'll tell you. I remember one time in the 3rd grade, that was my first year in that new school. Some of us would tease this one boy because he had come to school with red overshoes, and we said they were girl overshoes. And did we ever get in trouble? So all of us, I think there was 3 or 4 of us boys. The next week, we had to wear our sister's overshoes, and I remember having to wear some white ones, and I was so embarrassed. My mom and dad, they said, "You have it coming." And I remember we teased that guy with those red overshoes, and we really paid the price for that. So, but we had some really firm teachers. I mean, some of them didn't hesitate, you know, they had those meter sticks, they didn't hesitate to let you have it with that. We had one, I know, that, boy, she clubbed you with a book a lot. If you got out of hand, I mean, if she was doing a lesson or something, and if you even whispered, and you never got it during the time you were whispering, it was almost like afterwards. And I know one time we were all sitting, I remember in this school, we were in the basement room, and I was in one row, and some of my friends were here in front of me, and she would be writing on the chalkboard, and we would whisper and, you know, make fun and do different things, and she didn't say anything. She just turned around, and she had the biggest darn book. And, you know, she came down that aisle, and we never thought for a moment what was going to happen, and she clubbed every one of us, just whoop, whoop, whoop. You got it, and you straightened right out.
Oh my, what a...
So, yeah, they, like I said, the meter stick wasn't out of bounds.
Let's see here. Were the students in the school primarily German Russian, or were there other ethnic groups in the school as well?
Oh, very much German Russian. If they weren't, we knew that. For some reason or another, they was always a little teasing going on. But mostly in mine, they were all German Russians. There were some that had like Norwegian names, but either their mom, maybe their mom was maybe a German Russian.
So some tie to it.
Yeah.
The teachers, did they treat the non-German Russian students the same as they would the...
Oh yeah, very much so.
What did you take for lunch when you went to school? What was a typical lunch you would take?
Oh, you know, most of the time, like once we started going, it was some kind of sandwich, I think. I don't remember much of that. By the time I was in the upper elementary school, they already had school lunches, you know. So I'm sure my mom would have some kind of meat sandwich, boiled egg, maybe a little piece of fruit or something. But, you know, during those years, lunch wasn't that big of a deal. It was like getting to school and having fun with your friends. You know, what you had for lunch, it didn't matter. You know, you never worried about, or if she would send a lunch with you, it was probably in a lunch pail or something, but it never bothered me. Now, I think nowadays kids, if they had to take lunch, they want to make sure they have certain things, like bag of potato chips and all that, but then it was just like, give me the pail, let me go, you know, and we had cookies, homemade cookies were in there, syrup and bread and some kind of meat, you know, canned meat or something.
What was the typical recess hour like, or noon hour?
Man, they were, when I think about those, we must have used 10,000 calories. We would run and wrestle all the time. I mean, the boys especially. We'd have all these games, and they were all running games. But I know we wrestled a lot to see who was strongest, and tag team wrestling, you know, but we do a lot of running games, so tag running, and the girls were involved in some of that, but for the most part, we roughhoused a lot.
Did you get in any mischief during your recess hours?
Oh yeah, there would be teasing going on, you know, and then we'd get in trouble. I know that one time, well, that happened on occasion, but one time we teased the teacher's son, and that was not good. Didn't realize it until, you know, she found out about it. Did we ever get it for that? And the interesting thing is, at that time, you know, if you got in trouble in school and if you went home, you were just glad they didn't know. But if the teacher ever told, I remember one time I got in trouble with a male teacher, and I mouthed off, and he just clubbed me good, and I mean, he just really slugged me. And my dad was, for some reason or other, that day my dad was there to pick me up, and he went out, and he told my dad what he did. And today, of course, you'd have an attorney with you then, but when he told my dad what I did and what he did to me, when I got home, I got it again. You know, for being out of line and all that kind of stuff. So it was, but yet, you know, they had to treat you, you know, they couldn't call you names and stuff. I mean, they could discipline you, but they couldn't humiliate you.
How many grades were in the new school that you went to?
How many grades?
Yeah, how many grade
They
levels?
went through high school.
They went through high school?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember a favorite teacher? How you were?
In elementary school, I would say it would be Mrs. Whitmire. She was our 6th grade teacher. And the boys were all in love with this lady. She was from Streeter, North Dakota. I think she was a doctor, but no, she was a Whitmire. No, she was a doctor, but she was married to Whitmire. Not one way or another, but she was the prettiest thing I had ever seen in my life. Lady with dark hair and slender and kind and just, I mean, she was like looking at a picture, you know? And the boys, I mean, they just all had a crush on her. Sometimes fight because they had a crush on her. And I think she was very young, you know, like maybe 21 or 22, but she liked us too, you know. She really treated us nicely. And you know, we would sometimes get out of hand, but you know, with her demeanor and because we liked her so much, if she showed any anxiety, we would lay off because we liked her so much. But she would be my favorite.
What was your favorite subject?
Oh, when I think back, actually probably something with history or geography. I love geography. If I were to pick anything, that would be the ones. And of course, gym class was always fun when I got to go outside and run and jump and wrestle.
How was it different for recess hours between the winter and summer months? How would they do that?
Didn't seem to make much difference to us. I mean, we would go outside no matter how cold it was. We were all dressed really well too. You know, in the wintertime we knew. Our parents knew, and we knew we had to have good clothes on. I mean, but you know, I think back sometimes. I mean, we just seemed to get along no matter how cold it was. I mean, I remember having really cold feet sometimes or cold hands, and it seemed like you just got past it. You knew when to go inside, and you were out long enough. And one of the things, you know, and I remember that was in Logan County School. Every school had this metal flagpole outside, and they always said, "Don't stick your tongue on that metal flagpole." And I would see kids do that. I said, I would never do that. And then they'd have to run and get the teacher because there they were hung up with their tongue sticking on that flagpole. And they'd have to come out with some warm water or something. And one day I did, and there they were. They had to run out and get the teacher out and put warm water on. Oh, in school I know that some of the games that I remember. Well, of course, like I was in 2nd grade, I know our teacher in 2nd grade, during recess and at noon, he would have wrestling matches for us. And he would pair us up with different kids, and he would be like a cheerleader, you know. He'd be down, and I was all pretty good at that wrestling. Unless they were much bigger than me, I did pretty good. But then he would coach the next person, you know, so, but we played like, not only in 2nd, but in other grades. And then on Saturday nights, you know, all the kids that went to school, we would meet Saturday nights too, and we would play games like Pump Pump Pull Away. And that I remember. I think we were up to City Park, and we played that all night long. It was just incredible how much running went on. Of course, there was slides up there and stuff, so but that was important to us to meet our friends and see who could run fastest, you know, and see who was strongest, and those types of things.
Thinking back, when you were playing these games, did you have a favorite place that you would go to play?
Well, when we played these, especially on Saturday night, it was the park. It was the Lair City Park. there was just lots of kids up there, and there was lots of games going on all the time. And there almost seemed to be adults up there too, kind of supervising. But at school, in the playground, that was a big deal, especially in the elementary school. Big playground in the back, and we'd play softball. And a lot of times the teachers were out there and had organized games for us too.
Did your school have any organized sports that you would play in, or?
In high school?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. By then we were, basketball was a big sport track. We didn't have any football or like that, but basketball was a big sport.
Did you play in basketball?
Oh yeah, I got to play that. I played right up through my senior year. In fact, we had some fairly good teams and good memories of that. We had some good players. I think I was one of the three senior boys in that one team. It was fairly good, and then we got beat in the regional tournaments or something, and everybody was disappointed. But track, we had track, and that was hard, We had baseball for a while. So that was all in junior high school and in high school.
Growing up, did you have any pets?
Oh yeah, we always had dogs, horses, but dogs. We always had a favorite dog, and on the farm, for some reason or another, there'd always be a stray dog that showed up, and we want to keep them all. Of course, my dad would do away with them or give them away. I think one of the favorite things, and it wasn't just that happened at our place, but I think that's why it happened that way, because sometimes if you had a dog that came on the yard, if you were going to Jamestown in a car, the next time you went to Jamestown in a car, that dog was probably in the trunk. And then they'd stop about Streeter and open the trunk and let him out. And we cried and cried because we'd sit in the back and we'd watch his dog would chase the car, trying to come along, and they would drive away, and we'd sit back crying. Because we had attached to him in about a week. But my favorite pets were always were dogs.
What were their names? Do you remember their names?
Oh, Fenny was one. I remember Fenny was really, and she was kind of she was one of those dogs that I think she was like a dog that would herd sheep, Can't remember what kind they are. But she was so smart. You could send her to get the cows, and she'd do it. If they weren't too far away, if you said Fanny and you pointed that way, she'd go out, and all of a sudden all the cows are coming. You'd show up and she'd bring them. Incredible. But we had lots of animals on the farm. I remember getting the living dickens beat out of me from goose one time, because we had these little houses, and this time of the year when they would lay those eggs, and my mom always said, "Don't you go in there if the gander gets you." And what does mom know? Well, sure enough, I went in there one time, and to get an egg out, because I think they put them under clucks and stuff. I went in there and I turned around, and here was the gander, and he came in there and he just gave it to me with his wings, they flop up, and I was black and blue and bawling and running. I'll tell you, those were rough times. Horses, we always had horses, and I'll never forget, because there's so many of us, and we always had riding horses, but I always remember that when we went on Sundays, and there was a family, but they were the Emmanuel Buchholz family, and they had boys about our older brothers' ages and our age. And many Sundays we'd go there with horses, and we'd ride there because they had straw piles and all kinds of stuff. And guess what? I would always get the horse. There wasn't enough saddles, so I'd have to ride bareback. I'd have to have the worst bridle. It was probably a straight bit bridle, and the lamest horse. And I'd end up going along. Well, if you wanted to go along, that's all you had, so you went. You didn't complain. You complained about it, but if you wanted to be part of the action. And then we'd go over there, and we'd play these cowboys and robbers and stuff, and that somebody didn't break their neck because the younger ones, we'd be riding along full gallop on a horse or something, and the older ones would come along and they'd just push you right off the horse, and you go spinning and tumbling down, and then you try to do that to somebody else, well, they were all bigger or something, but then you'd always get a horse that somebody else had abandoned or got thrown off of, and it was generally better than what you had, so you get on it. I remember those times, and that was, when I think back now, that was rough. You were scared as can be because you're riding along at full gallop, and some of the older guys would come alongside and they push you off. Now, if you didn't have a saddle, it was easy for them to push you off if you were bareback. But if you were in a saddle, then you hung on for dear life. Or, the worst part is then, they come alongside and they pull your horse's bridle off, boom, and there you are, sitting on a horse in a saddle, and that horse was running like a wild one, and you had no way to control it. So, what those horses did, they ran home. They'd run home to the barn, and they'd get up to the fence, and they'd stop short, either jump the fence, or they'd stop short and send you flying, so.
Did any of you ever get hurt?
Oh, I think we got bruised, but I don't remember ever anybody getting sprained ankle, yeah, but broken bones and stuff, I don't ever remember that. But I'll tell you, we got thrown a lot, especially the younger ones.
Very lucky there.
Oh.
Growing up, did you ever have any family stories that your parents would tell or that your older brothers and sisters would tell you?
My dad he would know stories from his relatives, and he talked, even though he wasn't born, or my grandfather wasn't born in Russia, but he had stories that he had heard from his ancestors from Russia about these horsemen and stuff that were the robbers or whatever, people that would come over and they'd be good horsemen, but they would be really nasty folks and kill people. And he had heard that from maybe his grandfather or whatever. And those were all very interesting stories for us youngsters to hear that. And he could tell it really good, whether it was the Cossacks or whatever, but he knew about that stuff. And when he started talking about that, we asked a lot of questions and listened, and tell about horsemen, good horsemen coming with hooks in their feet, and hurting people, and that would be like in the steppes back there. It kind of made you wonder, when you're your little kid and you think you're a big shot riding this pony, and all of a sudden your dad telling you about what he had heard about his ancestors, and then when you watch movies about Cossacks and stuff and how they killed people and the horsemen from the steppes and all that, you think, oh yeah, you're just a little player here, Yeah, he could make up stories too about jackals and hyenas and stuff, like coyotes and stuff, and it kind of scare you a little bit, you talk about, you hear a coyote or a hyena, and they talk about, oh yeah, they drag little kids off, and you're thinking, oh man, that can't happen to me, So, yeah, he had good stuff.
Do you have any, were there any superstitions that just really scared you as a little child?
Oh, one thing I remember that really well is, when we were kids, one thing I remember well was kids would get ringworm. And it was like a callus or a scale or something, and it always seemed to be in your head. And they'd lose their hair, and they'd have a Boschee hair, and it was almost like a scaling. And I remember getting that, and I had it right here. And then my mom took me to a lady by the name of Mrs. Kranzler. And there are several ladies that did that, and they called it Boschee, I think, Boschee.
Mm-hmm.
And what she did for me, then I'd have to lay on my back, and then she came over, and she had no shoe on, and then she took her big toe, never touched it, but she would say things, and she would go with her big toe over this ringworm that I had, and it went away. Not right away, but it went away after that. Probably would have anyway, but I remember that a lot of the kids had that probably, and seemed to work. I
There's
don't
been
know. So superstition, yeah, there was. Yeah.
Did you have any favorite rhymes or sayings that your family said a lot when you were growing up?
Not that I can remember. I remember we had to pray every night in German, but nothing that I can remember like rhymes.
What prayer did you say?
Well, they were like one sentence prayers, like Ich bin klein, my Herz ist dein, and Gottes Friede und Wasser, those types, and you didn't dare go to sleep at night before you said those. One of the two. And my mom would be in bottom of the steps. Uva, can you help Baden? And we'd have to say it. And she'd have to hear it. And sometimes Reuben and I were able to do it together, but most of the time, it was like he would say one and I'd say the other because he said that one, so I'm going to say this one. Or sometimes we'd say it together, but for the most part, she stood in bottom of the steps and we had to pray.
So were you raised Lutheran or Catholic?
Lutheran. My dad, we were Missouri Synod Lutheran. I think my dad was Reformed before he married my mom, but they were Missouri Synod Lutheran. I confirmed with the catechism.
Was the church, how far was the church from your?
Church was in town in Laird.
In town.
Yep.
Did you have any types of music or entertainment in your house?
My dad would play that. I've still got it. I don't have it here. Well, I have it here somewhere. It's that little box accordion. He would play that a little bit. My older brother Clarence would play that. But my dad had this mouth organ. And he would play that all the time. We just loved it when he played that. And he could play such smooth, soothing stuff. And I often wanted to do that, take lessons and play that. But he played it by ear, just by sound.
Mm-hmm.
And he had like 2 or 3 tones that he could, or songs that he could play. And he would get that out, and we'd just sit on his lap or nearby, and he'd just play that.
So you never learned how to play yourself?
No, we'd always take it, and then we'd probably play a line or something, just that sound different,
Besides your brother Clarence, did any of your other brothers and sisters learn how? Or?
In music?
Mm-hmm.
No, not that I'm aware of. I know Clarence did the accordion, that box accordion.
You talked about being confirmed and everything. What was your confirmation classes like?
Very strict. We had it every week, and we had a little catechism. I still got it. And we had Noel. Every week we had Noel so much, and if you did it, you had gotten in trouble. Your mom would find out, or dad. And our minister was he was a nice guy, but he was still very strict. And when we got confirmed, we had to answer questions in front of the congregation. And if you didn't get them right, you just didn't get confirmed. And that was as scary as you can be, Here, you didn't know what question you're going to get. Because you had 1 or 2 questions, and you had to answer them right. And in front of the congregation. I thought, oh, Lord, what was that? But I did. I
How many
everybody
people?
did too.
How many people were in your confirmation class?
I think there was about 8 of us in that class.
About how large was the congregation?
I don't know. Members, probably 100, 120.
So pretty intimidating when you had to get up in front of them all.
Yeah, I'd say there's about 75 there that day that we confirmed. I still remember that, walking in there, getting down your chair, and wondering what the question was going to be that we had to answer.
Did anybody not answer the questions
No,
right?
they all did. And one person cried a lot because they were crying before they had to answer the question. And I thought, oh man, I remember his name, but I'm not going to say it. And even, even at Christmas time, when we were little kids, we all had it. They called it, you had to know a piece. You had to know a verse of some sort. And, oh man, we would practice those. And And you always hope to get a short one, you know. And then my mom would always say, do you know it? Do you know it? And she'd say that in German, and oh yeah. And then when you get to the Christmas Eve, the program, boy, you better know it, because if you didn't, you had it. And this one boy, he knew it all the time, but when he had to get up in front of people, he cried. And he could never finish.
Oh no.
He'd start crying. We even tried to help him sometimes.
How old was this boy?
Oh, I don't know. We were about maybe 10 or 11 or something like that. He was so, and we couldn't laugh at it because we'd get in trouble, but I know he'd get up and he'd start saying something, and he was just, whoa, 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 and he'd just cry. But never finished. And everybody said, that's okay, that's okay. You know?
Oh my. How was your relationship with the pastor? Was he, I mean, you said he was strict, but were you able to approach him, or was it?
Oh, he was a great guy. He was strict, but you know what? We would go on hay rides and stuff, and he'd wrestle with us. I'll tell you what, he was as sweaty as we were. I mean, he would throw us all over that hay rack. I just can't imagine the girls on there, you know, they'd have to sit and watch. But he'd get in there and we'd jump him like 2 or 3 of us at a time and wrestle around his neck, you know, and he'd throw us off and then he'd jump us, you know. He was a great guy. But when it got to confirmation, you had to know your stuff, or else.
So when you, were the church services in your confirmation class in English, or were they in German?
They were in English.
They were in English.
And when I was there, it was English.
What about your older brothers? Were they?
They had German.
They had German?
They were all confirmed. I know Leroy and Clarence and Dolores and Paul, they were all confirmed in German. Reuben and Shirley and I were the only ones confirmed in English.
Did you have, after your confirmation, did you have a special family celebration or anything?
Oh yeah, we had a big, they got the house, you know, sandwiches and the brothers and sisters and like my godparents came and grandpa and grandma and a lot of them.
What type of food was served at that? Or?
Food,
Mm-hmm.
ham, potato salad, Coogan, all the good old stuff was there.
What was your favorite childhood dish that your mom would make?
Noodle soup. Noodle soup. And for dessert, graham cracker crust with chocolate pie and with homemade whipped cream. My wife always laughs at me because I always say to her, oh, when are we going to have homemade noodle soup, you know? Well, she had noodle soup today, in fact. But homemade noodle soup, and then of course she had canned chicken with it, you know. And then that dessert, I mean, that was special. When we had that was great.
Was there a traditional German dish that your mom made that you really enjoyed, or?
Weichfiedler, she made those, Boschee, those were really good, I like those too. Knifla, she made those a lot with sauerkraut. Cheese buttons, I didn't like those, she made those a lot, but then she would make special ones for me without the cottage cheese in there, she would make just straight ones. She could make chocolate cake with frosting on there. My brother and I mean, we could eat that all the time. Special cake, even now, my sister-in-law, before my mom died, she helped her. My sister-in-law got that recipe really close, and she makes it every once in a while when we're wishing, and that's really good. And she made that chocolate cake with that caramel frosting on it. Oh, it is good. But favorites, good old homemade noodle soup.
What was your least favorite?
My least favorite?
Least favorite meal?
Case Knefla with the cheese in it.
With the cheese in it?
Yeah. That was a big deal for me. Everybody else thought it was wonderful. Oh Lord, give me something else. Yeah.
What was your favorite holiday growing up?
Christmas.
Christmas. How did your family celebrate Christmas?
Well, we go to church, and after church is when you came home, and then you got to open your Christmas gifts. Yeah. My mom had a Christmas tree up, and, you know, a real Christmas tree with all the balls and lights and stuff like that, and gifts and presents and stuff, and that's probably my favorite to me. And then at church, of course, you know, we, during Christmas, then we would get this paper sack. Every kid got a paper sack doled out and given out by the elders. And in that paper sack was a little sack of candy and an orange and an apple and lots of nuts and different kinds of sweet candy and stuff. That was favorite to me because and it had your name written on the outside, you know. And you go, wow, it was something special. You did it in church. Then you go home and then you got to open your gifts. Didn't get that many gifts because, well, when we were little we did, but as you grew older then you had to draw names because there were so many, you know, so couldn't buy gifts for everybody, so then we would buy for one, you know, and that was pretty good for us. But Christmas would be my favorite.
What was a typical, a traditional Christmas dinner?
Probably ham. Ham was big at our house. My dad just loved ham. And ham with a bone in it. And I still get laughed at on it, because I still like ham with a bone in it. And when we get to choose sometimes, I'll say, I want ham. Oh yeah, you gotta have a bone in it, right? And I say, well, no, we can't buy that. But for us it was, or goose. My mom would make goose, you know, or duck, you know, chicken. But I know ham would have been a big one.
Did you celebrate it with your immediate family, or did you invite your grandparents, or did you go see your grandparents, your aunts and uncles?
Well, they were with our immediate family. I don't remember too much about my grandfather and my grandparents, other than my grandma and grandpa called a little bit, but Christmas time I don't remember that very much.
Okay. How did your family celebrate Easter?
Well, that was a time where that was kind of a big, that was my next favorite, because my mom would have these Easter baskets, and then she would hide them. You know? She'd hide stuff, she'd have colored eggs, and there was always candy in there too. You know? And then she could hide them at the most creative places, and then of course when we got up in the morning, they were hidden, you know, because we could see her making them during the week. Then we'd help her dye the eggs and all that, but that morning when we got up, then the first thing we started looking, all three of us, you know, and looking under different places, and you'd find your stuff. That was kind of exciting.
What about 4th of July?
Oh my, that we did lose hands and fingers sometimes with firecrackers. It was incredible. We would, well, and in town, you know, everybody had firecrackers, and you always threw them at each other. You're not supposed to, but you always did. And you know, and you light them and throw them. Sometimes they take. Of course, a good thing they weren't like, you know, they were just those little black cats, you know. But some of those were, you know, cherry bombs. Now, cherry bombs will take your fingers off or bruise them really good. So we had these little black cats, and you throw them under girls' feet, you know, and stuff like that. And then you get in trouble for that. But it wasn't that bad. But we would get these. We would also get these firecrackers that they have a stake and bond, which they're meant for being in the ground, but we would hold them in the hand, and we'd light them, and they'd have like 7 or 8 shots, and we'd chase each other. We'd have little battles, you know, for behind granaries and stuff, and boom, boom. We didn't lose eyes and stuff like that, you know. We did. But the cherry bombs, they were those big ones. They were about this big with a fuse on it. And if you put that under a pail, that pail would go up to about 15 feet and it would have a bulge in it. So you knew you didn't ever want to have that stinker in your hand because you would be in big trouble. But it seems like everybody always had, at one time or another during the year or during the 4th of July, somebody got hurt with those things. I've never knew anybody that was permanently hurt, but they always were. Got black and blue and stuff. 4th of July was big. That was a big celebration.
What did your family do for that?
Well, we generally went to town, you know, like at, if they went to Lair, you know, they had games for the kids, you know, races and all that kind of stuff. But often we would go to Jamestown. There was the Stutzman County Fair. It was a huge fair at that time. And And then we got to, go through on the Ferris wheel and stuff like that. Take our mom would bring lunch along, and we'd have to eat at certain places, and they had lunch, strawberry pop, and minced ham sandwiches. I just love those things.
Sounds like happy times. What about birthdays? How did your family celebrate birthdays?
Oh, Mom would always make a cake of some sort. She would have creative colors, on the cake, but we always had some kind of cake that she made. Never missed it. She never missed it. Had candles on here. It wasn't, I don't know. To me, it wasn't that big of a deal, but we always celebrated something.
Going back to Christmas, did you celebrate that in school?
We did. It wasn't, not that I can remember that it was a real big deal. We brought gifts for the teacher, and stuff, but I don't remember much about that. That was a huge.
Something that's traditional today is Valentine's Day, celebrating that in school. Did you celebrate that?
We did, and I think, no, that was May baskets, was it?
No.
Because we used to have to, can't remember how that went with the May baskets, because you had to chase girls and kiss them, or they chased you and kissed you. I don't remember. You had to run like the Dickens, I know that. But Valentine's, I don't remember much about that. But I remember in school we would always have a Valentine candy, and give them away and exchange it and stuff.
Was anyone in your family seriously ill or injured while you were growing up? Do you remember anybody being?
No, not that I remember. I know one of my brother Floyd, one time got caught in the flywheel on the side of where the belt of the tractor was, and he got burned pretty seriously. And he got blood poisoning. I remember that, and everybody was pretty concerned about it. I was a little kid, and I really took him to the doctor, and I knew my mom talking about, boy, if they don't take care of that, he's going to die. And that's scary, But you could see that streak up his arm. Then my brother Ruben, one time, he got caught in the same type of thing, only his leg got burned pretty bad, but it wasn't life-threatening. Not that I can recall. I know my older brother lost one of his fingers in a binder, I think, in the night that was going back and forth.
Okay. When you were a child, did your parents ever talk about politics in your family?
Oh, my dad was Republican, pretty strong. My mom would follow along. I don't remember them. I know my dad was always in favor of Republican presidents, but no, not a lot. Not that I can recall. I know after the war, Second World War, my dad would talk about the Nazis and stuff like that. Not too much politics.
Did any of your family have to serve in World War II?
No, not that I'm aware of. My dad always said he was too young for World War I and too old for World War II. He was born in 1902, so he would have been 14 or 15 for World War I and 39 or 40 for World War II. But I'm sure he would have got caught up in it.
And then your older brothers are probably too young still, or just...
My brother Clarence was in the Army, during the Korean War.
Okay.
He was the only one that was in the military.
Did you like growing up in the country, and if so, why?
Oh, you think back about that, and I didn't mind growing up in the country because it was a peaceful, wide open time for me. When I think back now, there's so many anxieties you have in life sometimes, and when you think back to when you were a little kid, the whole world was yours out in the country. You had you know, all kinds of animals out there. You had horses and you had wild animals and you had cows, and it seemed like you could absorb so much just by watching and going out and about. And, no, I never regret growing up there. I think when I think back now, you were able to get to know yourself. If you were alone or if you were with your brother, one of your brothers or your sister, you always had something to do. But I know when I was alone on the farm, when nobody else was there, you know, and I'd be alone, I could do a lot of things and just experiment. Sometimes, you know, when you think back now, you wonder why you didn't blow some stuff up, you know, with gasoline and fires, that kind of thing. But I think the fact that growing up in the country for me was the serenity, just the ability to enjoy the wind, to enjoy everything, nature. When I think back now, that kind of relaxes me when I think back to what I did during those times.
What was the most stressful childhood experience that you had to live through?
Stressful. Oh, I would say that probably when I got in trouble, you know, with the law or something, that was a little stressful. I did get in some pretty serious trouble when I was little, not really. And I remember stealing something and I got in trouble with the law. And you know, there were some lessons learned on that. I'm thinking, you know, when that happened, everybody, all the adults, you know, were there to try to fix their life. And I remember being in a parade, and for the church, for the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church, a great Lutheran church. And I remember being in a parade, and I remember being on a wagon, and I was supposed to be an African American because they had painted me, you know, or colored me somehow or another. And the lesson learned here was there were several of us on there, and as we were going to the parade, some kid, probably older than me, and I had been in that trouble, they would taunt you and they'd say, "Oh, Adam, you know the commandment that says, 'Thou shalt not steal'?" And I remember that, and that was hurtful. But you know what? At the same time, I thought, you know what? You kind of got this coming. But I remember that being a real high anxiety piece for me, and really took me down.
What
But
helped you get
you
through
know what?
that?
It was a lesson.
What helped you get through that?
My brothers and sisters, probably. And I remember my Sunday school teacher who said, that's okay. You don't have to worry about that. And like my brothers and sisters were through stuff like that. But it was pretty crushing. But then I shouldn't have done what I had done either.
Well, what was the scariest thing that you lived through as a child?
Oh my, I don't know. I wasn't scared of a lot of stuff when I was a kid, you know, unless it was adult generated, you know, but I think the scariest thing for me is I had a problem with my appendix. And I would say I was 7 or 8 years old, and they talked about surgery. And surgery would have been at Bismarck. And they said at that time, you know, you couldn't eat nuts, and you couldn't eat raisins and all that kind of stuff, because that was supposed to be part of your problem. And one way to fix that too was to do what they called wheelbarrows. And what happened, what a wheelbarrow was somebody would hold your feet up and you would walk on your hands. And then your feet were up. And this was supposed to, I don't know why, help drain the thing or whatever. Man, I remember walking on my hands and it didn't bother me a bit because I didn't want surgery. That was as scary as I've ever been because, they talked about, going to Bismarck and being there overnight and you have to be there and they're going to cut into you and stuff and everything. And, oh man, and some people die, and then if it bursts, they can't save you. And that was scary for me when I think about it.
Did you have the surgery? Or?
No, I never did until I was late 20s. I had my appendix on.
And when did the wheelbarrow stuff start?
About 8 years old.
Oh my.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Interesting. And what was the happiest time during your childhood?
Oh, there's so many times. Any particular time, I think, when we go with our parents and go visiting to your friends and they had kids the same age, or the Christmas gatherings, when they were all together and it was warm and everybody was getting gifts and laughing, and those were happy times for me. Just the love of the family.
What was the most adventurous thing you ever did as a child?
How old child?
Younger child, before high school.
Oh, before high school. Adventurous thing. Oh, man. The first time I ever went away from home, I went to a Bible camp in Garrison, North Dakota. And our minister that I said was so good with us, he convinced some of us to go, and it was like 3 or 4 days, and I'd never been away from home that long. That was an adventure for me, to live or to sleep in a room, in a bunk with a kid who I have no idea where he came from, got to know him. I was never so glad to get home. I didn't think I'd ever get home. I mean, every day seemed like an eternity, Really never been away, even though they had you active all the time. You just got so homesick.
How old were you about?
Oh, I'm thinking like 12, 13, somewhere, maybe 11, somewhere in there.
And then how about go adventurous during your high school years?
Adventurous, huh? In high school. Oh man, I don't know. We did a lot with friends, from going to dances, but adventurous. Friends and us, we hunted a lot, went to dances, went to beer parties. We had, I don't know if it was an adventure or, nowadays, beer parties are, a no-no, but that when I grew up in high school, I think there was one every week. And they were usually out the country somewhere, and there was people from Boschee and Lair and Ashley there. And it was always kind of I don't know if you call it an adventure or not, but there was always fights because some kids from Lair didn't get along with some kids from Boschee and from Napoleon or whatever. There was always somebody, I don't know why, but it always happened that way, or if somebody looked at a girlfriend drawing, then it was a real problem. You need to have a fist fight going on. There was always lots of beer. I think, I don't know if it was a deal then or a bad deal or not, but I know some of my friends, if I go to visit them, if we had dinner there, we had homemade beer with our meal. That was the way of life for them.
So these beer parties, would they be something that you would share with your parents? Like you would tell them that you were going to this party and
no,
something that...
But we always knew that if we went, it didn't matter. If you got home at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, you still got no cops. And I remember that really clear one time. We had been out most of the night. I think it was like 5 we got home in the morning. And we were making hay during that time. And my job, I think, was to rake hay that morning. And my dad and I going out, he had cut hay and I was going to rake hay. And as soon as he left, I thought he'd gone. He and I had gone and made one round and I stopped. I was so tired. I stopped and I sat beside the tractor wheel, turned it off. And the sun was on me, it was so warm and I was just beat, and all of a sudden I fell asleep. And it wasn't 2 minutes later, I woke up and here was this man standing over me. And then he let me know about being out all night and having responsibilities in the morning. I'll never forget that. And he wasn't a big guy. He was only about 5'2", my dad. You know, but man, was he a big guy in other ways. You know.
You have mentioned the dances. What were those like?
Oh, they were a lot of fun. I mean, we would go and meet a lot of people, meet a lot of girls and guys, and there was always beer. Even though you weren't of age, there was always beer in the alley or somebody's car or something. Always avoiding the police. You know, the sheriffs were always around in the local police, and some guys would get arrested because they were smart. They were just smart alecks, you know. You had to know how to treat people, you know. But I don't think there was. And of course, you go to movies weekends too, you know. You wish you could. But I know in the summer, especially when it got nice, there was a lot of beer parties in the countries.
Did you have a favorite movie that you went to see when growing up?
Shenandoah. And that was, but I was older. I was like in high school when that was. But I don't like that movie Shenandoah. I've seen it more than once already. You know, I've seen it on TV. But I think I went to see it twice. It was such a moving show.
Well, is there anything else about your childhood memories that you would like to add?
No, my childhood memories were very good. I learned a great deal. When you think back now, you wish you would have paid more attention to certain things, but it wasn't everybody. I mean, you wish you would have done more schoolwork or been kinder to certain people. But that's one thing I have to say though too. Maybe I got that from my parents too, compassion. I hated when other kids would get picked on. I didn't like that. And many times I would come to their aid because they didn't have anybody, you know. And I was reasonably able to handle myself physically. So if some kid would get picked on too much, I usually stepped in. If it was one of my friends, I'd just tell him, you're gonna have to lay off, you know. Quit hitting him or quit doing this. I mean, he doesn't deserve that. And they would, but they look at you like, and I was prepared to do anything I had to do. Because I just didn't think, a kid should be hit in the face.
Did you get that maybe from your brothers, your older brothers and sisters? Did they stick up for you as a child, do you think, or?
Yeah, because I saw my older brothers and sisters, they get into it pretty good with each other, and I saw them face off some other people, yeah. But I think, particularly from my dad, you know, he was a fair man. He didn't tolerate kids being picked on or hit from somebody else. And he always, and I know even some of the friends that live in Fargo that grew up with me, and they still remember my dad. In fact, the one guy says, I remember your dad, he was one fair man. Because I know that boy that I'm talking about, he was beat up a lot by his dad. And I know he'd show up at our place, and my dad showed a lot of compassion for him, and we saw that too. So.
Well, a couple of concluding questions here. Why do you think it's important to tell your story, to share your story?
I think it's important because it's for everyone to know and remember. So much of our history has not been told because of the way our ancestors grew up and the way they were treated and the way they were told that um, they couldn't tell who they were and where they were from. So even when I grew up, like when I finished high school, one of my biggest fears when I went to college, and it didn't happen to me because I practiced. So many times, people from my area, or students from my area, they had an accent. And you might, if you went to Lair, Napoleon, and Strasbourg, and Lincoln today, you could still pick up accents in some sense. But one thing I didn't want the college professors do to me is know that I had this accent. So I really worked hard so that I didn't have an accent. And no, I don't think about it much, but at that time it would have really bothered me. And it did bother me when they say, oh, you're from Blair, huh? From Blair out there, yeah, what do you think, yeah, and all that stuff. And even now when I, talk to some of the folks, they still have accents. And, I can even mimic it now, And, but that was one of the things I really didn't want, to have some college professor mimic me and tell me that I've got an accent. I worked pretty hard at that, and I think I'm pretty clean. I'm pretty clean, but I mean I could quickly do that in a hurry. Or things like you say, like if you aren't careful, like plug it in and plug it out. When I grew up, if they wanted a cord unplugged, they'd say, go plug it out. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not.
I have never
It was
heard
like, Adam, go plug that out. It's no big deal, So when you went to college and you talked about plugging it out, they go, huh? What do you mean, plug it out? Or a lot of, and even today, in the area I grew up, they would say something and they'd be in conversation and they'd say, or they'd say something that ended with not. You're coming over this Sunday to interview me, not? And we did that in high school, and when we got to college, somebody would say, huh? What'd you say? So you clean all that up, So to me it's important because I look back to my parents and their parents and their parents. The history is really hard to come on. You talk to the Norwegian people, I think they have probably done a better job at that. And maybe because they came from there to here, where our ancestors went from Germany to Russia and then to here.
Are there any other thoughts or observations that you would like to share?
Oh, I'm proud of where I came from and who I am. I'll never be sorry that I'm German, and I'm proud of my heritage. I think that my parents were proud of their heritage, proud of our customs. I was, taught the religion. I thought that was a special deal, and that's thanks to my parents. It seems like that's not, and that isn't quite like it used to be in terms of like our kids would go to church. Like we didn't dare miss church. If you were out late Saturday night, church. You had to be in church. That's it. And I appreciate that. At that time we thought, oh man, this is all, why do we have to go to church, and all that. But today we appreciate that. And I know when our kids grew up, I tried to have them go to church, but I wasn't as insistent as my parents were to go to